नमः ओम विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिनिति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशधारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधार श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 Hare Krishna. Thank you everyone for joining. So we'll continue our reading of the fourth chapter. So yesterday we saw two verses. We are discussing the topic of a person, the characteristic of a person who has already achieved true knowledge, and this is basically the perfection of nishkam karma, or action without attachment, or actions performed as an offering to Lord Vishnu. When one performs that, one ultimately reaches the stage of jnana, and that is what is explained. So in these few verses, so one who is in full knowledge is devoid of sense desire for sense gratification, and for such a person, even the person will act, but the reactions of such work have been burnt up by the fire of perfect knowledge. That is how, um, because it matters, whether one will get reaction of action or not depends on the consciousness with which one performs. If one is acting for selfish enjoyment, for one's own pleasure and pain, I mean, with the desire for one's own pleasure and mitigating one's own pain, then that leads to reaction. So that is what is mentioned here. But if one is already in jnana, one has attained the real realization of one's relationship with the Supreme Lord, and one is acting in that understanding, then such an action becomes an offering of love to divine, and that will not lead to any bondage in this world. That is what is mentioned. Huh. And such a person will not perform any fruitive action. So all of their actions will be an offering unto Lord Hari. That is what we discussed. Further, we are going to start with verse 23 today. Um, yeah. So we'll see such a person who has already attained jnana. What is the characteristic of the work of such a person? That is why I'm saying this. Verse, let me see. Mhm. Yeah. Rohan, would you be able to read?
Yes, Prabhu.
Yeah. I'll decide, sir. गतसङ्गस्य मुक्तस्य ज्ञानावस्थितचेतसः यज्ञायाचरतः कर्म समग्रं पविलीयते.
Yeah. Translation. The work of a man who is unattached to the modes of material nature and who is fully situated in transcendental knowledge merges entirely into transcendence. Purport. Becoming fully Krishna conscious, one is freed from all dualities and thus is free from the contaminations of the material modes. He can become liberated because he knows his constitutional position in relationship with Krishna, and thus his mind cannot be drawn from Krishna consciousness. Consequently, whatever he does for Krishna, who is the primeval Vishnu. Therefore, all his works are technically sacrifices because sacrifice aims at satisfying the supreme person, Vishnu Krishna. The resultant reactions to all such work certainly merge into transcendence and one does not suffer material effects.
So this is very, thank you, bro. This is very nice elaboration. I mean, it's directly merging. So it's mentioned that one is the work of a person who is fully situated in transcendental knowledge or jnana. Such a work merges entirely into transcendence, which means that it naturally becomes an offering unto the Lord. So that is what. So there is no karma associated with it, like that. So that is what is mentioned here. So there's some explanation also. So because this is very important, so because one is liberated because he knows his constitutional position in relationship with the Krishna, and thus the mind cannot be drawn from Krishna consciousness. Consequently, whatever such a person does, he does for Krishna, who is a renewable Vishnu. So I think this example we gave many times. For instance, like let's say mother is acting in relationship with the child. So is whatever she does in her day is all centered on the child actually. So she may actually be taking care of various needs of the child. She has to get up very early, prepare food for the child, or maybe make arrangements so that the child can sleep peacefully, right? Or whatever. whatever things she does. Even she take care of her own needs also, she's feeling that how can probably my milk should have proper nutrition so the baby is fed. So everything she thinks of is in relationship with the child. So whatever action she performs, every time she's consciousness of how my baby can be taken care of. That natural instinct is there for a mother, especially when the child is young. That is very much intense. That is because that relationship is very strong for a new mother for the child, and that mind will always think about the welfare of the child, and that's why whatever action the mother is doing is all connected for the child. It's all meant for the pleasure of the child or for the well-being of the child. Similarly, when a devotee develops that kind of love for Krishna, when develop that kind of relationship with Lord, then whatever devotee acts may be acting in so-called material field also. For instance, in this case, Arjuna has to fight a battle and he has to kill people. But whatever action one performs, that action merges into transcendence. Basically, that action becomes a karma or liberating action. That is what is mentioned. But that basis is what one is acting out of this constitutional position in relationship with God. So for that realization within the heart, one performs one's spiritual life very seriously, and by performance of one's bhakti, one comes to that understanding and realization. And then when one acts, that action becomes transcendental in nature. It is no more binding. So that's what I mentioned. So resultant reactions to all such works merges into transcendence, which means that they will give one they will not give any material results. They will not suffer any material effect. They will only receive transcendental benefit out of such a work. That is what's mentioned in this. I hope this makes sense. If there are any questions or comments, please feel free to ask. You can move. All right. Thank you. Sorry. Just a minute. Yeah, Shruti, would you be able to read?
Yeah, yes, Prabhu.
Okay, so I will recite the first thing. ब्रह्मार्पणं ब्रह्म हवेर् ब्रह्माग्नौ ब्रह्मणाहुतं ब्रह्मैव तेन गन्तव्यं ब्रह्म कर्म समाधिना. Yes, please read that.
Translation. A person who is fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness is sure to attain the spiritual kingdom because of his full contribution to spiritual activities in which the consummation is absolute and that which is offered is of the same spiritual nature. Purport. How activities in Krishna consciousness can lead one ultimately to the spiritual goal is described here. There are various activities in Krishna consciousness, and all of them will be described in the following verses. But for the present, just the principle of Krishna consciousness is described. A conditioned soul, entangled in material contamination, is sure to act in the material atmosphere, and yet he has to get out of such an environment. The process by which the conditioned soul can get out of the material atmosphere is Krishna consciousness. For example, a patient who is suffering from a disorder of the bowels due to overindulgence in milk products is cured by another milk product, namely curds. The materially absorbed conditioned soul can be cured by Krishna consciousness as set forth here in the Gita. This process is generally known as yajna, or activities or sacrifices, simply meant for the satisfaction of Vishnu or Krishna. The more the activities of the material world are performed in Krishna consciousness or for Vishnu only, the more the atmosphere becomes spiritualized by complete absorption. The word Brahma means spiritual. The Lord is spiritual, and the rays of his transcendental body are called Brahma Jyotir, his spiritual effulgence. Everything that exists is situated in the Brahma Jyotir. But when the Jyotir is covered by illusion or Maya or sense gratification, it is called material. This material can be removed at once by Krishna consciousness. Thus, the offering for the sake of Krishna consciousness, the consuming agent of such an offering or contribution, the process of consumption, the contributor and the result are all combined together, Brahman, or the absolute truth. The absolute truth covered by Maya is called matter. Matter, dovetail for the cause of the absolute truth, regains its spiritual quality. Krishna consciousness is the process of converting the illusory consciousness into Brahman or the Supreme. When the mind is fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness, it is said to be in samadhi or trance. Anything done in such transcendental consciousness is called yajna or sacrifice for the absolute. In that condition of spiritual consciousness, the contributor, the contribution, the consumption, the performer or leader of the performance, and the result or ultimate gain, everything becomes one in the absolute, the supreme Brahman. This is the method of Krishna consciousness.
Thank you so much, Ritu. So this verse actually has the word Brahma, which repeats 6 times. So what is the meaning of Brahma? Here it's mentioned spiritual in nature. So we should not confuse this Brahma um, with Lord Brahma. So it's actually spiritual nature which is mentioned as Brahma. Or absolute truth is also referred to as Brahma. So usually the impersonal aspect of absolute truth is referred to as Brahma, but even the personal aspect is also Brahma. Like that also we can consider. Actually, in 10th chapter, there is a verse where Arjuna calls out Krishna as Param Brahma, Param Dhama, Pavitram Paramam Bhavan, Rusham Shashvatam Divyam, Ajadevam Ajam Vivam. So there Arjuna actually refers to Krishna as Param Brahma. So Brahma refers to spiritual nature. Even we are considered as Brahma because that's the same spiritual nature. But Parabrahma is only Krishna. He's a supreme Brahma, like that. That is what. But ultimately, Brahma refers to spiritual nature. So in this verse also to mention. So what is difference between material and spiritual? I think that has to be clear first. So spiritual is that which is in relationship with God, right? Which is in relationship with Krishna, which is basically a constitutional nature to be in connection with Lord. And forgetfulness of that true nature is nothing, is matter, is material. That is what is nature. Basically, absolute truth or Brahma, when Brahma is somehow or other, which is all of us, individual soul, because we are infinitesimal, in fragment. So because of being insignificant, we can get covered by Maya. And when we get covered by Maya, then we actually forget our constitutional position, and that is considered as material nature. And that is considered as being control of material nature. And that is where we develop material consciousness, which is basically we become forgetful of our true nature in relationship with Lord. So that is what is materials. That is what described here. But when the consciousness is absorbed in Krishna consciousness, when the one's mind is absorbed in Krishna consciousness and one acts in that consciousness, then such an activity completely becomes spiritual. So that is what we have been discussing, and that is like referred to here. So Brahmarpanam. So when as the spiritual consciousness, one is performing with that attitude, then the Brahma Arpanam, the contribution becomes spiritual, and Brahma Havil. Yeah, so basically, what one is contributing to become spiritual, what one is contributing become spiritual. Brahma Agnav, the fire to which one is offering, that also becomes spiritual, and the person who is offering also becomes spiritual. That is what is mentioned. And Brahma, even, and because of such spiritual consciousness, one will attain Brahma or the spiritual nature, spiritual kingdom, to be more specific. Everybody. Basically, everything becomes spiritualized. So this is very, very important because most of us have to act in this world in various capacities. So this is very, very important to transform all our activities into spiritual activities and thereby attain the spiritual kingdom ultimately. Otherwise, as it was mentioned, by one's activities in this world, there's a very high chance that one can become entangled. Yeah. So it is a conditioned soul entangled in metal contamination is sure to act in metal atmosphere. And yet he has to get out of such an environment. So that is the challenge. We have to act in this world, but still we have to, though while acting in this world, we have to plan for getting liberated. So how is that possible? This process is mentioned in this verse. By performing activities in Krishna consciousness with the true knowledge of one's constitutional position. That makes one's activities spiritual. Yeah. So so is that the active? So the thing is, for instance, that it is mentioned that spiritual master's body is not material because a spiritual master, is genuine spiritual master, completely engaged himself in the service of Lord. Because of that, the body, though it is still made of the same material elements fundamentally, but it has got a very, very significant aspect uh, of being offered to Lord Vishnu. Because of that, that body is considered as good as spiritual, like that. For instance, when we go to a temple, I think we discussed this in Bhakti Circle. Um, when we go to the temple, we see the deity form. The deity form is made of material elements, but because the Lord has been invited in that form. That form is, though it's made of material elements, it has much more significant aspect associated with it. With this, that it is non-different than Krishna. For instance, if we take like $20 bill, if I take a $20 bill, we can say that is it paper? Yeah, definitely it's paper. But because it has some government authorization, it has gotten much more value associated with it. Because of that government authorization, we don't call it anymore as a piece of paper, we call it as $20. Similarly, when the Lord is invited in the form of deity, though it's made of marble or the certain material elements, but there is much more significant aspect associated with it. Because of that spiritual process, that deity becomes non-different than Lord himself. Similarly, when the action, the so-called material action, when the consciousness is purified, it becomes like authorized according to the knowledge of scriptures, according to the teachings of Bhagavad Gita. And when that action is performed in the spiritual consciousness, though the activity may look material or mundane, same as some other person may be performing, but because the consciousness is different, that work becomes elevated to the spiritual plane. And such an action, when performed in the bright consciousness, becomes a spiritual offering, and that can liberate ones from material contamination. So this very nice example which is mentioned. So material action is performed with selfish propensity that may cause entanglement. Just like one person may overindulge in milk products and get disorder of bowels. What is the solution is not to give up milk product completely, but to take another milk product which is curd. Similarly, what is the way to get rid of material entanglement may not be that you give up material entanglement or material activities completely, because that one may be not ready for it, as we discussed previously in the various verses in Bhagavad Gita itself. One may not be ready for giving up mental activity because of one's consciousness, which is still absorbed in mental activity. So, or one's mind is still absorbed in mental activity. So, what is the solution? You act in a way by which you don't get entangled. That is with spiritual consciousness. That is what is the essence of this verse. I hope this makes sense. Yeah, I think that covers essentially everything. I think it's already 9:19, so it's a good time to pause here. But if there are any questions or comments, we can discuss at this point. We are still seeing the characteristics of person who have attained jnana, and what is the characteristic of a work of such a person. That is what we have been discussing in these verses. Further, Krishna will explain in detail about what are the different kinds of yajna which are performed. So one more corollary, or I would say connection which is done. I think in Mahabharata there is a verse also which comes in this regard, where this it's mentioned, right? The offering. So how everything becomes spiritualized. So for Arjuna, the act of his fighting in the war is actually performance of yajna, like that is mentioned. How is it? So in that it is considered that the entire Kurukshetra battlefield of Kurukshetra is considered as yajna kunda, and Arjuna is actually the Brahmana who is performing the yajna, and the basically there is a ladle which is used for taking the offering, so and pouring in the fire. So the ladle is compared to the Gandiva bow of Arjuna, which Arjuna will be using as a weapon, correct? And the offering of butter, the butter is compared to the opposite army of the Kurus, who are adharmic people. And the Yajna Kunda, sorry, the fire is considered as Virat Purusha, which is none other than the Supreme Lord. So basically, Arjuna's offering of Yajna is basically he's using his Gandiva bow to fight and kill the opposite soldiers of the Kurus who are adharmic, and that becomes an offering unto the Virat Purusha, or the Supreme Lord himself. So for him as a Kshatriya, this becomes an offering of Yajna. And because he performs this action as an offering unto Lord Vishnu, that entire action becomes a Yajna, and all the uh, ingredients of that action becomes purified, like that. And that ultimately takes Arjuna to the spiritual destination. So this is how spiritual action becomes a Yajna. I hope this makes sense. I think we should pause here. If there are any questions or comments, please feel free to. Yeah, we can wait for a few more minutes. If there are any questions, please feel free to ask. Or else if you want to drop off, that's also okay. It's already done. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.